Hey everybody, what is Wavejump here, and welcome back to another video. Today I'm going to go ahead and covering the execute command. Now the execute command is a command that is a command that I used to cover a lot in my previous series. It was the first one, or one of the first ones that I would cover every single time. And that was already somewhat complicated for a lot of people, or at least they would find it complicated. But I feel that was complicated, then 1.13, I don't even know what that is, because 1.13 is way more difficult than 1.12, and as such, and I will go ahead and go through all of the execute command as best I can. There will be some aspects I won't be able to touch on as well as others because they're just really long to go through, and I don't have the time to go ahead and go ahead and learn how to do everything, but also create an example thing. And especially given that this is going to be something that a lot of people will be watching as their first video as an introduction into the execute command, I don't want to overload people with too much information, but I will go ahead and go through everything even if I don't show it to you. So anyways, this is episode 1. Thank you as always to my patrons Shatter and Beta Noir on Patreon. If you want to consider supporting me, you can support me for as little as $1 a month. And it's a huge help to me, and it helps me go ahead and further upgrading my setup and create higher quality videos. Anyways, we're gonna go ahead here and start on off. And first off, I want to explain, of course, what the execute command is, because you may just be wondering what's execute. It sounds cool, or it sounds interesting, which, to be 100% honest, is kind of the way I found out about it when I started messing around with the commands a couple of years ago. And the execute command used to go ahead and be very simple. You would go execute, and you would add a couple of other arguments, which arguments are essentially just parts of the command, different things you put in. I'll get to that in a minute. But you would go ahead and run a command as something else. So for example, you could have every pig in the world go ahead and teleport itself one block up. Or you could have every entity say its name or something like that. And the execute command is much more versatile in 1.13. You can go ahead and choose the position of the entity in many different ways. You could go ahead and store some scores. You could check some block statuses. You could do rotation. There's if and unless. There's all sorts of stuff. So anyways, I'm gonna go ahead and get into it. I'm gonna try not to just have you wait for too long. Of course, since this is episode 1, I'm going to go ahead and let you know that if you need a command block, just do /give your name and then a command block. If you want to know how to set up a world, or if you need help with troubleshooting, or actually mostly if you need help with setting up a world, go ahead and view my episode 0. It'll probably be on the end card, or if not, it's linked somewhere in the description. Anyways, if I go ahead here and run this first command, for example, you notice it just as myself, it runs the example execute command. It's simple. And if I go ahead and take a look at all this command is I'm saying execute, right? So of course, any command, I just start off with /execute, and that's the beginning of it. And then you add these different modules to it. So you notice I said execute as Wavejump games. Now I could remove this, and it would run that as well as the command block, I believe. But I want it to run it as myself, so I do execute as, and then whatever. So if I were creating a new execute command, I could do /execute as, and then you notice actually what's nice about 1.13 is it gives you all these options. So I could say as at A is everybody, at E is all the entities, so that includes items or pigs or just anything including a player. At P will be the nearest player, at R will be a random player, at S would be what's already been mentioned previously in that command. It'll make more sense when you get to use cases that use it, although I haven't gotten to use it yet in 1.13. And then, of course, Wavejump Games is just my username. Alright, so for example, I have this command here, execute as Wavejump Games. And then the key one that you want in pretty much every execute command is the thing that says run. So again, if I were creating an execute command, I could do just execute. In fact, I could probably just do execute run. So execute run, and then I just put whatever command I want here. Now, you may not know these commands, but I'm going to go ahead and anyways go ahead and show you examples of them. I could break down what the commands do, and I will make videos on pretty much every single command in 1.13 by a point. Anyways, for example, execute run, say test. You notice that runs as myself because, well, it's executing as myself. And if I go ahead and paste it in the command block and run it, the command block says test now. And one of the things, by the way, that you should know is that it used to be in 1.12 that you could go ahead and do /say or just say, for example, in this command. Of course, say is not the only command, but you might use summon or whatever command or scoreboard. And you could use a slash or you could not use a slash, but in 1.13, slashes will not work, so do not use them. Now next, for example, if I want to run is all entities, well, this is every entity, but obviously there are no other entities loaded, so I'm going to load a couple of these guys in, and there we go. This is every entity. Now this third one here, we'll go ahead and look for every entity with the name example name, and because I'm doing execute at, and I'm not doing execute as, but execute at and execute as in this case do the same thing, because execute at just says, okay, at every turtle, run this command, which really every turtle is name example name, or execute as every turtle would run this command as well, so they would do the exact same thing. And I did not mean to get rid of that, hold on. So again, I would do execute as at E, and at E is sort of the entity selectors. So selectors are sort of at E, at A, whatever. And what they go ahead and do is they tell the command what to go ahead and run this for. So I'm going to go at E name equals example name, and then I go ahead run set block, for example. And then one thing you should know of that's very important in Minecraft is something called relative coordinates. Sorry if you already know this stuff, I just want to go ahead and make sure everybody is very clear about it. And by putting in these little squiggly marks here, it's typically the button above tab, and you could press shift in that to go ahead and pull it up. It'll go ahead then and select that thing's current location. So for example, I'm saying, look, if your example name, then run it at your current location, because each tilde means its current location. Now say the first one having a 1 at the end, that would mean it would be 1 more in the x direction, or -1 would be 1 less in the x direction, or 1 will be 1 up in the y direction. In fact, I could even make it 1 more in the z direction as well, but I'm going to keep it as that. And in fact, I could make it something other than stone. I could make it something more interesting now. If I scroll through here, let's make them all have blue beds or something. Actually, I don't think that'll work because it'll be floating. Let's do brown wool, sure. And I don't need to put anything else, so I could just go ahead and click done here. And when I click on this, if I did it right, which I clearly did not, because it wants more information. One thing you notice is it's supposed to go ahead and explain to you what's going on, but it's not explaining to me, so I'm just going to set this stone again and deal with it later. But this should work now, as long as I did it right. And there we go, except for I was wrong earlier actually when I said at and as could be substituted, because you'll notice it just set the block above the command block to it. So I actually have to, you know, as just means they run the command relative to the command block. But I actually in this case want to set it to at, because, well, as you could tell, I don't want to fill that part in with stone. I want to fill in any other part with stone. So there we go. Now above all their heads, there's stone, and that poor turtle is suffocating. So there's that. It's very simple. And this next one is even more complicated, but again, it's stuff where it's modular, so you know, you don't have to have all of these in the exact same way. I have a feeling a lot of people are gonna have trouble with the execute command in terms of orders of things and all sorts of different problems because it's really weirdly worded. But anyways, I'm gonna go ahead and use an if command here. So I'm saying execute if, and this means of course it'll only run if this condition is true. And I'm saying if, and then you could plug in a couple of things for if. You could say block, looking for if a position has that block. You could do blocks, which go ahead and let you go ahead and select like a range and sort of go ahead and find if the blocks match. You could search for entity, which works if the entity exists. And again, entities would be like items or pigs or players or anything like that. Or score, and this would mean you could go ahead and sort of put in different scores and make sure that that a scoreboard objective matches the correct range. And scoreboard I'll get to in another video. Also, I should mention, if you ever need help on any of these little mini aspects of the commands, little modules, you'd go ahead to the Minecraft Gamepedia page, and it actually lists all of them under the 1.13 section. I will probably go ahead and link it down in the description below. Anyways, so I'm saying execute if the block at these coordinates is a daylight detector. The daylight detector is this daylight sensor right here. Of course, I could set it to whatever the moonlight looking one now, but I'm going to keep it at the daylight version. And I'm going to say as everybody, rotated, and rotated is another one of these. I just kind of threw it in as an example. And rotated is an argument that lets you go ahead and specify which way the player will be facing, or which way the command would be facing. So it's saying, and oops, sorry about that. It's saying make sure the player is rotated towards 90-60, and you'll see what that means in just a minute, and then teleport yourself 5 blocks up. So if I stand here, when I press this button, you'll notice I'm facing, if you look over at the top left here, oops, let me press this again. Yes, I'm facing at approximately 90-60 based off of that right there, and that it went ahead and teleported me above the command block. Now, of course, one of the things is I might want to go ahead and do as at A, for example, and this will make it go ahead and run wherever. So instead of just being at that specific location, I could stand anywhere and press this button, and it'll still apply to me. And that's pretty simple. Alright, and the last little one I'll cover here, and I'm going to cover a couple of other ones, just not show you them, is the store result one. So you notice on the right here, I have this example objective, and again, scoreboard I'll cover in another video, but if you look right there, there it is. And the reason why that's useful is that if you take a look here, I'm going ahead and I'm saying store the result when I go ahead and or store the result in my score for example objective, and store the result of trying to run say hi. So when I go ahead and run this, of course say hi is going to work, and it's going to do that. So I'm going to go ahead and do as at E run TP 1 block up, and hopefully I did it right this time. Maybe there we go. Now I notice they all teleported to 1 block above here, which may have caused some slight issues. I'm actually changing it to like 5 blocks up so that they don't all suffocate. But anyways, yeah, when I go ahead and press this button, there we go, they all get teleported there with the 2 turtles that are still alive. So it gave me a 1 because it ran correctly. And yeah, apparently there are ways to go ahead and make that number even higher depending on like the amount of entities that it was successful for, just so you know. But yeah, there's that. Now, what you should know, if you have any issues with the commands, go ahead and if you need help, paste the command in the comment section below explaining what you're trying to do, and most likely somebody will go ahead and try and help you. The problem is oftentimes people like say it's not working and then never reply, or say it's not working and then don't give me a command or anything, or what they're trying to use the command for. If you need help, tell me that. Please, again, don't just dislike and say that's not working, because I mean, you could literally see that it works. It just means you're doing something wrong, most likely. Oh, another couple of quick set of things before I go over this last set of execute arguments. If you go /game rule, command block output, and set that to false, that is what makes it so that the command blocks don't like put stuff in chat. For example, if I had this at true, which is the default, I get this spam that says like sets the weather to clear, or set the weather to clear from a command block I have somewhere else in the world. So that's just something you should know, and I think that's about it. Again, one quick thing is you could press tab if you ever want to autocomplete something, which is quite helpful to know, but I believe that should be about it outside of these last few execute things, which my my computer scrolled away from that part of the wiki, which is very helpful. Okay, anyways, so you could do execute as entity, and then the command, of course, which executes it as the entity. Execute at will do it as a position of the entity. Well, specifically though, it's not just position. It's position, rotation, and dimension, which is quite interesting. There's positioned, which allows you to specify your own position. Positioned as, which lets you go ahead and do it at the position of a certain entity. Align, which goes ahead and lets you align your command to the block grid. So for example, it'll be at like, if I'm standing right here, I'm not exactly aligned in the center, but I would be at about 194.5 and negative 455.5 if I wanted to be aligned, or maybe whole numbers. I'm not sure exactly which one it chooses, but it aligns it anyways. And then there's the facing one, which goes ahead and runs it as if you're facing that location. Facing entity makes it as if you're facing, or which executes the command as if the person execute it is facing that entity's eyes or feet. You select eyes or feet, and it's, yeah. Rotated as, which lets you go ahead and execute command like the executor is rotated in the direction of the specified entity. So again, it's like you choose an entity and you say, okay, everybody face this location. Rotated lets you go ahead and manually specify. We did that one earlier. In lets you go ahead and specify the dimension. So you could say in overworld, in the end, in nether. You could do anchored, which lets you go ahead and choose a different type of coordinates for the rest of the command. These different carets, which I'll get to in a future video as well. The conditional commands, so if or unless, block or blocks, or entity or score. I think I went over that exact thing earlier. And the store thing lets you go ahead and store a bunch of different things. So it lets you store results of things. It lets you store the amount of times the command was successful. And again, it usually will be 0 or 1, but sometimes you're able to actually go ahead and get a number more than 1. This is very similar to the stats command if you ever paid attention in 1.12 to that, or previous Minecraft versions generally. If the command is not successful, no matter what, the result will be 0. And execute store, and anyways, yeah, there's lots more stuff with execute store. You could even store stuff in boss bars, and you could do this thing called data paths. Again, there's a lot more complicated stuff for me to get into in this series. I may do like a full execute rundown as a video, which will be quite a long video. Yeah, anyways, let me go ahead and take a quick look if there's anything else I wanted to cover here. And yeah, I think that's about it. So again, I hope you have enjoyed this video. If you did, go ahead and leave a like down below. Subscribe if you haven't already. I will be coming up with this content as often as I can. As I'm recording this, I'm about to actually leave for a tiny little trip, and then I'll be super busy for 2 weeks. But I'm hopefully going to see if I could pre-record some stuff if I have time. And usually I try to upload every Wednesday. Just of course, that's not always possible due to time constraints. Anyways, I hope you've enjoyed this video, and thanks for watching. Bye. I did not mean to fall into the void there. Alright. Anyways, thanks for watching.